past few days, in the capital, we've had news of horrific crimes against children, sexual crimes. And these cases, because they've come in increased frequency, have renewed the debate of what is the right punishment for rapes, especially when it concerns minors. In the midst of that, the Madras High Court has come out with a judgment where the judge said that barbaric crimes require barbaric models of punishment. And he said that that barbaric model of punishment perhaps could be castration for child rapists, which could, and I quote him, have magical results. So talking about that, giving their first reactions, we have a very interesting panel of guests. Joining us from Chennai, we have the National Commission of Women's Chairperson Lalita Kumaramangalam. We also have someone from the Madras High Court who is associated with the case. We have Mr. Rajashekharan. Now, the Verma panel had opposed it, had completely rejected castration as one of the punishments for rapists, and someone who worked closely with the Verma panel, in fact, assisting Justice Verma, is Shweta Sri Majumdar. She joins us here. And we also have Anant Asthana, who is an activist and lawyer specializing in child abuse cases. Now, if I can first go across to Lalita Kumaramangalam, the judge believes that you need this kind of perhaps a barbaric model of punishment is what is required. You agree?
Let me put this in context. First, I think that in cases of child abuse, we don't have one size that fits all. We have to look at various, for want of better words, types of child abuse, sexual abuse that currently exist. If you have a little kid of 11 who's raping a smaller child, 3 or 8 or 5 years old, then it's just not normal. So we can't just say chemical castration and shove them aside. But if you have adult serial offenders, then I think chemical castration, I am not talking about physical castration, should be perhaps an option that is also on the table. I am not saying this is the only option available, and I am not saying that merely chemical castration also may work magical wonders, as the judge has said. But from a point of view, I think we cannot just, brush this option aside. There are cases, and there are many countries where chemical castration is available. I think in Israel, somebody did it voluntarily also about a couple of years ago. As you know, in the US, you have about 9 states where this is available. And there they say that it's repeat offenders if they committed against children below 13 years. But as I say again, this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. However, it should be available on the table.
Okay, ma'am, and who puts it on the table? Because the Madras High Court judge has suggested it to the centre. Is it something that all of you will then forward as one of the departments concerned to the central government to consider in cabinet?
Look, one particular commission cannot decide this on its own. The NCW have asked, and if we are to be involved, will definitely say, along with NIPSID, NCPCR, etc., we will probably discuss, sit down and have a detailed discussion with activists, with other stakeholders in this. But we also have to talk to the parents of these children who've been abused. Last week I met that little girl of 2.5 who was raped, and the only thing her mother kept telling me was, if you permit me, I'll say it in Hindi, Didi, जिन लड़कों ने किया है हमें खबर आ रहा है कि वो 18 साल से नीचे हैं, ऐसा नहीं है कि इतना बड़ा कांड के लिए उन्हें कम दंड मिल जाए. Now we have to look at it from everybody's point of view, and yes, while I agree that everybody has human rights, I think in cases like this we need to first consider the human rights of these little children whose lives have literally been totally ruined.
Okay, Shweta Sri, you wanted to come in over there about she's saying the victims feel very strongly about this, and they've always felt, whether it is the Nirbhaya parents or these other parents that Ms. Kumaramangalam was talking about, they always feel that a justice system is not punishing them enough.
I think one of the most important points that we must keep in mind here is that it's very important to set the whole conversation in context. And the context that you must recognize here is that anybody who says that castration is not the solution, whether chemical or otherwise, is not only saying this with the notion that that the perpetrator's human rights are trumping over the human rights of the child. It's not such a simplistic issue. Let me highlight at a very bird's eye kind of view what the issue really is about.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at, again, I mean, obviously I cannot talk on behalf of the Verma committee, but I can tell you in the context of a lot of the changes that were recommended. One of the most important running threads in the report has been a recognition that sexual offences are not about sex. Sexual offences are in the head. You do something to the gonads, that doesn't take away what's in your head, right? At the end of the day, the reason why the definition of rape has been expanded to include penetration that is not sexual penetration alone is to recognize that there are many ways of violating a child, for instance. So there are many ways in which you can violate somebody. There are many ways in which
castration wouldn't solve.
So the moment you're saying that the problem really lies in somebody's sexual organs, what you're doing is trying to find a 2-minute solution and washing your hands off the problem. Right. That's not the issue. When you're talking about a 2.5-year-old child, 9 out of 10 situations, it wouldn't even be a case of proper penetration. So that's not really the solution. How much psychological intervention is happening with rapists?
Okay.
When you're talking of serial rapists, for instance, you need to have psychological intervention.
Okay, so that's a really important point, and I just wanted to point out before we go to our other guests that this audience behind me, a young audience of college students, they're totally divided. This side feels that it is the right kind of, it's not the right kind of solution, and this side says that's what is required. Mr. Rajshekharan, as someone who supports it, you've heard what Shweta Sri Majumdar said. That's perhaps what the Verma panel was also thinking when they ruled it out as one of the punishments that's required. And yet, why is it that you're such an advocate for this?
No, see, the Madras High Court judge has made an observation in the interest of the society at large and the victims. The victims are innocent children. But I don't say that it cannot be done, but castration is too much. But the judge shows his anguish, and he wants to tell to the people, the perpetrators of this heinous crime, that you cannot indulge in these kind of things, and you are going to be castrated by the government with due process after my order and observation. So he has only made observation and asked the government to consider on merits. So going by the merit of the matter, you should understand this case as a case. A foreign national wanted to quash his appearance in a child abuse case. So he took up that case and he quashed that red corner notice issued to him, and he has said on that petition, he has come out with this observation that the child rapist should be castrated. That is the point. So going by the merits, you cannot say that there is an existing law. My point is, you can make a strong law and speedy justice to be delivered, and you should ensure the fast track judgment comes in full form, and the accused is convicted and punished for his crime, heinous crime. That is my point. This Madras High Court judge needn't have to say it, but he is forced to say because of these kind of developments. Nirbhaya, last week in Delhi, 2 children were, I really empathize with the family of the children. But the situation is that. So he has thought out of his box and he has come out with such an observation. That's how we have to look at it. I'm not saying he has spoke something within the law. He has thought out of the box is the right point.
Yes, Mr. Rajshekharan, I get the point that you're making. So out of the box thinking, and perhaps an admission, what he's vocalizing is that things don't seem to be working. Whatever we're doing till now, it's not working. Do you think this, as Lalita Kumara Mangalam said, should this be an option on the table?
I don't think this kind of extreme measure should be an option on table.
Go ahead.
The options on table have also been suggested by the High Court. The irony is that we are only paying focus on first recommendation which he said. He said
because
that
it is quite a
it's first, but he has gone into details and all possible dimensions.
But he calls this the magic solution.
No. If you read the judgment, he has used that magic solution word.
That's right.
But then that doesn't take away the legitimacy of all other 10 suggestions and 10 directions.
Okay.
Like he has explained in great detail the value of sex education in the curriculum. He has also paid attention on
I think those are
efficiency.
things that the Verma
Police
panel also
efficiency.
said, right? To talk about a wholesome approach. I just
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
ask you,
Absolutely.
you're against this castration as a... One second, Mr. Rajshekharan. You're against...
53% of children in the country are sexually abused. That's the finding of the 2007 study done by the MWCD.
Okay.
Now, to implement castration at that scale,
Yeah.
is it possible? How many people you will castrate?
Yeah.
Also, castration doesn't mean you cut off the organ.
Can I say something?
Temporarily you suspend it, right? In the
Yes,
country,
ma'am.
No, it
Yeah,
is
yeah, go
physical
ahead.
and
countries
chemical.
where it is
There are two types
implemented,
of castration.
it's not a full scale remedy against it.
Okay.
Remedy has also been provided by the High Court. The irony is that by shifting the focus on sentencing, all other aspects which are preventive in nature
Good point. Okay.
are
Yeah.
diluted.
Okay,
That should not happen this
Manglam,
time.
you wanted to add to that before we go to our audience who have,
Yes,
who
I
really
just
want to
wanted
take
to
part in
say
this
that,
debate. Yeah.
that I just wanted to say very clearly that when I said what I just said at the beginning of the show, I was very clear that it needs to be one of the options. I feel it needs to be one of the options available. I agree that if you have an 11-year-old raping a little child, you cannot say chemical castration is the reply to it. But what the judge also said was that we need to have extremely tough measures which act as almost as preventive measures. Now, it doesn't mean that sex education should not be introduced in schools and the various other measures that have been suggested by the learned judge. But I still would like to emphasize that yes, as a preventive measure, we need to have a strong enough, a deterrent, for want of better words, a deterrent that will at least prevent a certain degree of repetitive crimes that are committed against these children. But yes, there is a huge number of other issues that we also need to tackle, and this cannot be the only solution available.
Okay, so let's take the deterrent angle. Shwetashri, it's obviously been implemented in America, in Russia, in some other countries as well, some states of America, so they obviously think it's a deterrent.
There's a great deal of publicity around chemical castration as has been implemented in the Scandinavian countries, for instance. It's important for you to understand the context, right? The chemical castration that exists there in most countries, like in Denmark, etc., is a voluntary form of chemical castration. Why is it voluntary? It's offered to a prisoner to allow him to walk free. So what you do is you sign up for it because there's obviously consent involved.
Yes.
This is something that's been
For
done
a
to your
sex
body.
offender too.
So for a sex offender, you offer chemical castration as an option.
Right.
They take it and they walk free.
Okay.
Now let's look at that. Cut to India.
Okay.
Let's implement that. Now you're talking about deterrence. Are you comfortable with letting the person walk free? Everyone who's advocating it today, are they comfortable with somebody opting for chemical castration and walking free? Do they really believe that would be deterrent? Do they believe that a person who has that violence on his mind is not going to go back and commit the offense? Second, chemical castration does not have a permanent effect. It's not a one-shot solution.
Okay.
You have to keep coming back. Now, if it's a voluntary thing, you have to keep coming back and signing up for it. So are you
Because
then...
it's not permanent. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you then going to put that sort of a burden on the exchequer to keep track of each of those prisoners who are out there in the world, to track their activities?
Okay, so we'll get Lalita Kumara Manglam and Mr. Rajshekharan, who are saying we should consider it as an option to react to that. Is that possible? Where you have a broad way the system exists, is it possible to implement? And of course, get more reactions in of why so many people feel this is the way to go. Back in just a bit.